And one of my readers, very, very interesting feedback that she gave me was like, why do the sighted have audio, text, everything as an option? So as a visually impaired person, why can't I decide when I want to consume audio content and when I want my own Braille content? Why can't I make that choice? Why am I to get only one choice? And which is what I tell people, that everything can coexist. Like, it's not one over the other, And Braille is actually a tool that helps and makes a visually impaired person feel independent,
Guys, good evening and welcome to another session of Dialogues That Matter. Thank you for joining us on yet another Friday evening and investing your time in a conversation like this. Today we're speaking to someone who's doing something that's definitely I would say definitely a pioneer in what she is doing. Without further ado, we have with us Upasana Makati, who is the founder and publisher of White Print. Now, what is White Print? Let me tell you a little about it. White Print is India's first English lifestyle magazine in Braille for the visually impaired. Yes, you heard that right. A little about Upasana as well. After realizing the absolute absence of reading literature for the visually impaired in India, she started White Print in 2013. And in the following year, she created a Tactabet, or one of its kind Braille tactile alphabet book in English and Hindi. Her work with creating awareness and spreading the message of inclusion was taken forward in the children's literature space with Look Out, Look Within, and Flowers for Sunena, which are a bunch of children's illustrated storybooks, which you must check out. And of course, for the work she's done, she has a bunch of laurels to her name. She's been a part of the Rising Talents 2019 Women's Forum for the Economy and Society, which was in Paris 2019. She's also received, I believe, the First Lady Award by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, which was by the Government of India in 2018. And the list just goes on and on. But I think I let our conversation speak further. And, we have a lot of things in hand we'd like to address. First and foremost, for those of you who did watch the video, we put out a video today which was titled B for Braille, which is also incidentally a topic for today. If you haven't checked out the video, please do go and check it out. It's a very sweet and short film made by Team White Print, and it's definitely worth a watch. But what that does is that the film addresses the urgency and the need to increase awareness about Braille and literacy amongst the visually impaired. Before we get into all of that, let me just start by asking Upasana. Firstly, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure. Thank you. And first and foremost, I'm sure everybody's thinking this. Let me just put it out there. How did this idea for White Print kind of culminate, and why was it so important to address this and make it a profitable venture, which from what I've seen is something that you were very keen on?
Yeah, thanks for noticing that, because so White Print was born literally out of curiosity. It was a middle of the night thought. Okay. That I just wondered, like, I love reading my newspaper in the morning, right. And I wait for it. Right. And I don't know why, but I just wondered as to what is it that the visually impaired read in the morning, Right. Right. And as usual, I think as all of us do, I Googled it and I couldn't find anything. So I literally called up a few friends of mine and my then boyfriend and now husband. I called him and I said, this is something that's really bothering me, and why do you have an answer? And then, everybody's response was, why are you asking us at this point in the day, Right, but I didn't stop there. Nobody had an answer, which sort of made me want to find, a little more about it, And right, I did. Right. I looked up online, and when I didn't find too much, I visited the National Association for the Blind, which it is the biggest NGO working for the visually impaired community in India. Right. I went there and I asked the director, that what do you read, early in the morning? And he said there are a few newsletters that are in Braille, okay. But there's nothing like a magazine or a newspaper that's available for the community. Sure. And, instinctively, I just asked him, what if I were to come up with a magazine? Would you let me print? I'll pay you for the services, but would you let me use the press? And he said, by the sound of it, you sound like a really young girl. And I was 23 back then when I went and I walked up to him. And how are you doing this? Do you have a backup? You have an organization backing you? Is it the government backing you? And I said, no, let me come back with a plan. And and all I asked him was for him to connect me with about 2 or 3 people
Right.
who were visually impaired, because I wanted to understand that what is it that do people not want to read Braille, or why somebody has not done this earlier.
Right.
That was it, and he connected with me, and I started talking to him, talking to
Right.
people, and
Right.
that is what gave me a lot of answers. First and foremost, wherever I would go, they would be like, now that you're coming up with that thought, you make sure you implement it. So that was like, oh my God, like people want to read
Right.
it. And the second thing that I learned was, that is the second part of your answer, a question, that people were tired of being sympathized with. The community didn't want any kind of sympathy, any form of sympathy. And keeping that in mind, I decided I'm not going to make it an NGO. I'm not going to make it a charitable venture. Of course, a lot of people told me that anyway, your idea was something that was not done before. By adding another layer of challenge, you're, increasing your trouble.
Right.
But I don't know, like somehow my gut instinct just said that I had to do this without it being a charity venture, because I feel the perception, the mindset of people is what is the bigger problem, that we
Right.
need to like sort of address. And then everything else is easy. Like, coming up with a magazine is not tough. It's
Right.
not like when somebody says it's a brilliant idea, I don't believe it's a brilliant idea. It's just a regular thing, like how you have so many magazines for a person who's sighted. So why can't somebody who's visually impaired also have options like that? So coming up with a product like that is not a problem, but
Right.
marketing it in the right way to sort of change mindset is what I think is more challenging.
Right.
And that is what I wanted to address by making it a for profit.
Sure. I think what you've done there is, I think, identified something that was not there, or something that, or there was scope for something to be done, and then you just went out there, spoke to these people, and then identified perhaps how you could tackle this. And all it took for you to kind of take this forward was have that conversation with these people, right? And then see how you could take it forward. Would I be wrong in understanding that this is by the visually impaired for the visually impaired? I mean, are
Not
the
really.
okay?
No, like I mean, see, to be very honest, in my team, I literally it's just me.
Right.
And finally, in Jan 2020, I had somebody who was very very kind enough. Geeta joined us as a associate editor, and
Okay.
she had been contributing for the magazine for a really long time. I've never met her, but
Right.
she was so connected with the whole thought of white print that she absolutely welcomed the whole idea of joining in as an associate editor. And it's truly been like a breather for me, because having done this for like 7 years on my own, like doing your marketing, right from being the office boy or office person for the company to being representing
Right.
the company at various conferences, it was a lot. So but yes, at NAB we have a team of proofreaders who are visually impaired, because
Okay.
I'm sure one of the questions would be, so do you know Braille? And no, I don't know Braille because I don't consume content in Braille. I consume content in print. But
Right.
NAB told me a very interesting thing. They're like, if you are going to learn everything, I mean, leave this for us. This is our job. Like if I am visually impaired, give me the job of proofreading for you in Braille. I don't, and that made
Right.
complete sense to me. Like, I'm not here to prove a point that, oh, I know Braille and I'm so, I know everything. No, not at all. Like, I don't consume content, but yes, I do make attempts to learn Braille in my own way. For
Right.
me,
Right.
it's curiosity for me again.
Right.
So I don't believe in putting this on people that, oh, you know what, you need to learn Braille and you need to know everything. Like, not at all.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, if you're taking little steps in your own way to be inclusive, that for me is great.
Right. Right. I think before all of this, I think the need and the urgency to increase, Braille literacy, right? That's something that kind of takes the forefront, right? Could you talk to us a little bit about why there's an urgency to for this, which is what your video B for Braille talks about as well, right?
So even B for Braille was a result of conversations, because
Right,
as and when I started getting deeper into the whole idea, I realized that there isn't a lot of, like, even when you read up about it online, you'd see that there's almost 50% literacy rate in India, with
right,
reference to Braille. And that happens due to a number of reasons. It's not, you can't pinpoint at one thing. I'll put it into perspective. For instance, there aren't enough resources in Braille, which is why people drop out
right,
of school. There aren't enough
right.
teachers trained in Braille, which is why you don't have enough people to teach people, who are
Teach.
visually
Right,
impaired after a point. There aren't textbooks printed after a particular standard in Braille.
right,
Then when you look at people who struggled and finally made sure that they got a degree, after that job opportunities are less.
right,
So because of that, then you don't get jobs, you're dependent population, and not everyone has the resources to who the family or their support group might be pushing them and helping them do better.
mm,
So it's a vicious circle, which is why literacy rates are so low.
right,
And I felt that it was important to address that, even
right, right,
to people. And then I thought, like, music and film is a great medium to do that, and it can create that impact that you really want. Like, even whoever's watched our film, there is no way we are, like, trying to get sympathy out of it. Not at all. Like, we're exploring the joys of reading,
right,
and just saying that, hey, this is a population that consumes content in another script, so why not create content in that script?
right.
As simple as that. So it's just making, or normalizing, for a lack of a better word, that it's that easy. Like, it's just that they can't see, so they read and write Braille. That's about
Correct,
it. So
correct.
that's what a video does. And wherever I've played this or whoever I've shared this with, I think it leaves a little impact. Like, it leaves that little thing in their mind, that even if they walk into an elevator tomorrow, even though they're using the elevator every day, they'll start noticing the Braille dots. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? And that is what we really want to do. That it's all around you, and it's very simple to be inclusive in your own ways. Like, not aiming for the big steps, but the smaller things,
right.
that I'd love to talk about, if you don't mind. Like, like, for instance, social media. It's such a integral part of all our lives, but using a little feature
All
of
things.
alternate
Yep,
text,
yep.
can make so much difference, that your image can be accessible to another sort of gamut of people,
Yeah,
who would love to connect, or who would love to sort of know what you're doing, so it
yeah,
literally just takes one additional step, but it takes care of so much, and you're being inclusive in your own small way.
yeah,
So
yeah.
these little steps that we all, if all of us collectively take, I think we'll be in a very, very sort of better position.
I think, in fact, until very recently, even I wasn't aware that alt text was a feature that helps. And when I got to know, I was just like, that's super. I mean, that's just so great, right? And then immediately I kind of started going back to how I can bring about this change. I
Yeah.
think the problem is that there's no awareness about these things. It's not a lot of times, if people know what it is, they will at least be mindful of it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Something else that I want to point out, which you did bring up and you shared with us, was that Braille is a script. It's not a language, right? It's a code by which all languages can be read and written, which is basically dots and dashes, right? So that's something that you pointed out, and which is great, because some people do assume it to be a
Correct.
language.
Correct.
And you're absolutely right about that. And you did. So the point that you brought up was something that I really did want to ask next. So basically, this is something that I read. According to the World Health Organization, about 2.2 billion people globally have a vision impairment, of whom at least 1 billion have a vision impairment that could have been prevented or is yet to be addressed, right? So this blew my mind. Firstly, secondly, amidst the pandemic, right? There's been this shift where the governments have globally realized that the vital information needs to be accessible to everybody in all different formats, right, including Braille and audio formats. What is your understanding and what has been your observations as to is communication really visual impaired friendly in general? If so, how can we, like you just mentioned a couple of things, how can we make it a little more inclusive?
Correct. So I feel, for instance, for the government level, there is a lot that needs to be done. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but your Arogya Setu was not accessible when they actually launched it in the first place. You know,
Okay.
and overall in India, like I'll talk about India specifically, we aren't an accessible country.
Yeah.
Like think about the fact that everything went online during the pandemic. Ordering stuff was all online.
Yeah.
The touch is such an important factor for the visually impaired, that everybody was suddenly at home trying to access apps and ordering things.
Yeah.
That's when there were so many mishaps. Like there are so many things. Like for instance, I know somebody was telling me that like when we are trying to enter our address, the thing suddenly vanishes. It's not accessible. So how do you navigate through all those challenges? And that primarily comes from a designer's point of view. For instance, if these little things are added right from the beginning, for instance, if you're developing a website, like I have made my own website on Wix. Now Wix gives you an opportunity to have image labels. So whatever image on your website is, it's accessible. The text on your website is accessible to a screen reader. That is
Yeah.
what the visually impaired person uses to consume digital content.
Yeah.
So just getting those basic things in place, that is your website accessible when you're making something. It might just cost you a little additional amount, but these are little things that we can start right from the beginning when we are building something. Like I feel like we build something and then we're like, oh, how do we make it accessible?
Yeah.
Even your buildings, for instance, for a wheelchair user, if you don't have a ramp when you're building the building, like a compound, like you will have to add it later, and then you'll say, oh, it's very costly. And we try to rectify things rather than adding these little additional features when you're designing. So
Right.
that mindset, again, it plays a very important role here. So I think the pandemic has brought these sort of things in front of people. Like Arogya Setu was the biggest challenge. Like imagine making it mandatory for one to have the app, and then what if you're visually challenged? How do you enter the office without showing the app?
Correct.
So that kind of struggle to do basic things. So I remember I was complaining about something, and one of my friends who's visually impaired, and he's like, "Stop complaining! Like the number of challenges I have to go through just to order grocery at home is phenomenal." So, and I'm
Yeah.
like, absolutely, like we don't make things really. You don't want to make it easy. Like there's no sympathy out here. Just make it accessible. Like
Yeah.
just do your bit.
Right.
As simple as having these feet, having like entering an extra line on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Everyone has an alternate text option. Incorporating that in your design, even things like when you are building like a PDF. Like if you go out online and check, there are ways to make a PDF accessible. Like not everything is like a Word document is the most accessible screen reader friendly format. So
Yeah.
even if you're doing a book, like for instance, when I did flowers for Sunaina, I couldn't print it. So my only option was to keep it an accessible document. And what we did was to sort of cater to every person, who's visually impaired. Like not everyone might have a super smartphone. So they told me go super basic, like go to a Word document, give us a Word document. And then what we did was we came up with image descriptions for every illustration.
Okay.
So these are little things that we could do. Like I always tell authors that if you're printing even 5 copies of your book in Braille, I'll help you make sure that happens. Print 5 copies in Braille and give it to 5 libraries. You would have done a better job at being accessible. And these are little things that I think all of us together as a community can sort of follow.
Right. I think something very significant is that we cannot complete the entire process and say that, oh no, I'm
Yes.
done with this. Now I cannot go back and undo it. The thing is,
Yes.
at the grassroots level, at the fundamental level, when you can be more inclusive, that's all we're asking, right?
Absolutely.
If that is possible, then why not do it, even if it comes at a little extra cost,
And
right?
I don't blame people. Like I am
Yeah,
totally against being like, oh my god, how could you not know it? I mean, I can talk about it right now so confidently because I have sort of soaked myself in it for the last 8 years, 7 years.
yeah,
And I'm more than happy, and that's what I do through my Instagram and Facebook, etc. Like I want to tell people the basics, like, and then go read that out to your children.
yeah.
Probably we might be helping build a more inclusive generation tomorrow. These are small steps that all of us need to take, not like aim for really big ones that sort of become very challenging for all of us. So, not
Correct.
aiming for the stars, but yes, small steps at our level, at every level, we all can definitely take. Like when
Correct.
I interviewed Kalki for one of her films that she was doing, and then I told the team that you must come with an audio described version of the film, and they ended up doing that. So
Yeah.
like at least just sending out the message, and I'm hoping that with all the videos that I keep making on my Instagram and about little things that might like, oh my god, I didn't know about this. Like I'm just here to tell that to you or share that with you because I have researched and I have learned a lot about it. So I think if we can do that, rather than being the activists of sort and trying to tell other people that how can you not do this, like I believe in a more like a more impactful, significant way of taking the smaller step and then then hoping for the larger picture to be more inclusive tomorrow.
Right, right. Of course, this is at a level where we can tackle this and how we can combat this, and what are the smaller steps, smaller yet significant things that we can do, right? Something else, which is I think a little more something that perhaps you and I might not understand very well, but can be a little more susceptible towards, is that as visually impaired people, um, uh, perhaps they're taught to see life as a challenge, right? And to face it and fight for their own independence. They don't get things easily, right?
Right.
What has been your experience with that? And I'm sure you have interacted with people who are visually impaired. And are those the kind of things that you kind of bring forward in white print, or what does white print entail? Again, out of curiosity.
Yeah. So in terms of content, it was one of my earliest readers. She was 80, and she told me that don't limit yourselves. Like we want to read everything, that even something that I might not be able to experience in my real life, but I
Yeah,
want to read about it. So
correct.
literally the magazine has everything under the sun, right from your sports to music to culture to fashion to politics to art, everything. Like we even had a column, like we've been focusing a lot with the environment and how we could make smaller steps in our own way to
Right.
sort of help the planet, and sort of undo the damage that we've already done. And we've been doing that. We've had an association with this outstanding platform called Eco Spotlight, and so we had an article where they had interviewed somebody who comes up with comic strips. So of course we were not able to sort of print the comic strip in tactile, but what we did was, what the writer did was, so she made descriptions of each comic strip.
Right.
So as simple as that, trying to make it more accessible for people who might not be able to consume it in its actual form. So yeah, this is in terms of the content. So it's right about everything. Even my readers do write about it, about different things that, like somebody wrote about how you can use Braille dots and create different shapes, with your Brailler. So
Okay.
fun things like that too. People, like, it's an open thing. Like the readers column is completely open for them to write whatever they might want to. Like somebody wrote about the number of instruments they know how to play, and someone wrote about the challenges that they've been facing. So yeah, I mean, life is challenging because I think of the mindset of people.
Yeah.
I feel that's the biggest culprit, and for instance, I know I have a reader who went to buy a cross pen because his father would take a cross pen to office, and it was his first day and he wanted to do the same. And the person at the mall was like, why do you want a cross pen? Like you're visually impaired and you don't need it. So that kind of sort of really bothered him, and and we spoke about it, and we spoke about how unfair that is. Like it's unnecessary, and that happens in at various levels. The challenges are endless. Like I get a lot of this. Like I get, why are you doing this in Braille? There's so much audio, and one of my readers, very, very interesting feedback that she gave me was like, why do the sighted have audio, text, everything as an option? So, as a visually impaired person, why can't I decide when I want to consume audio content and when I want my own Braille content? Why can't I make that choice? Why am I to get only one choice? And which is what I tell people, that everything can coexist. Like it's not one over the other, And Braille is actually a tool that helps and makes a visually impaired person feel independent, And why can't we give them an option if they want to read the book in Braille or they want to buy an audio book and read? So yes, challenges are at a lot of levels, including job opportunities where employers are not ready to give them jobs that they actually deserve. In fact, even during the pandemic, I had so many calls from various readers, and their parents, like writing to me and saying, we don't have a job. He's actually an MBA in HR, but no job yet. And with the pandemic making it all the more tougher. So yes, it is challenging because I think as a population have just made it very comfortable in ignoring. And the second whole aspect is just made a CSR department of every corporate that just does things because they need to do and it's mandatory, and not actually realizing what the problem is and solving that problem. But luckily, I feel like since the time when I started back then, there was literally hardly anybody doing anything in this sphere. But now, slowly and steadily, there are younger people, from IITs and IIMs, and I've gone to like small cities like Udaipur, and a lot of people wanting to do startups, solving problems of existing communities. And because I always say that one does not need to wait for their hair to turn gray to do something which is socially inclined. If you have a solution that might solve a problem or might be relevant to solve a problem in the society and you're making money out of it, why not?
I think interesting that you also brought up this point. The conversation I was having last week with Juhi Sharma, who also works with people of from high risk backgrounds. She brought up the same point that nowadays everybody who's doing work, social work per se, it's just because they have a CSR wing and then they just need to do some work and then to get it out of the way or for that extra certificate or whatever it is, right? So meaningful work and good intent is what goes a long way.
Like I've had a lot of problems with corporates where they say that, oh, your work is very one-dimensional, like only solving. We want something where we can give a whole budget and then like it shows a lot of impact. So unfortunately, we miss out on doing a lot because of these mindsets, which is why I think we need to work on that more so that hopefully things get easier.
Right. Something else that you brought up and something that I'm keen to understand as well is, like, for example, the mindset of this gentleman who refused to sell a pen to somebody because he or she was visually impaired, right? What happens, or what is it that you think is the way mainstream media per se, whether it's print, it's film, it's television, radio, whatever it is, how do you think that has impacted the way we look at, visually? I know that it has, but what are your thoughts on that, and how has that impacted, our perception about these people?
I think it's had a very, very deep impact, and it's your pop culture which is trying their best to sort of change it. But the whole idea of charity is so deeply imbibed in your media, in everything. Like, I mean, I don't want to sound like a little crazy, but I had somebody from the media who told me, tell me your story, and I said, I don't have this is my story. Like, I really thought about it in the middle of the night. And but she's like, yeah, but the story is not interesting enough. And I said, but this is what it is. And literally the next day in the newspaper, I read that I saw someone who was visually impaired cross the road, and I felt bad, and I started the magazine. So it was that, like, imagine that happening in 2013, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it affects, like, there have been people who've told me, why, if you are speaking here, can you bring someone who's visually impaired on the stage so that it creates that impact? And there are schools that have told me the same thing. And that is what sort of really troubles me, because these are the platforms that really impact people, on a large scale, and people like me are trying our best to change that, but we are far from the finish line. It's a long, long, long road for us, but I think it's supposed to change, and it must change, and which is why I think for me to be doing what I'm doing and to stay put on this is so important. And I feel like added pressure a lot of times, because it's challenging for us to get funds, because we don't fall under the CSR bracket. Companies need to get marketing funds to sort of work with us or associate with us. So it's a pinch for them.
Mm.
And we always tell people that, hey, listen, if you work with us, it's the image, the brand image that you're working with. You're not going to be talking about ROI when you're working with us, because we're doing something which is way beyond, like a lot of my friends say that I'm way ahead of my time in doing what I'm doing. But I think it's important, like, it's important for us to like I don't want to talk a lot about it, but even the Forbes cover, look, it really helped me, because it was like, people are like, oh my god, after having not a startup that's not making a lot of money, you're still recognized, as one of them. And that made a difference, because that made people, at least a few, sort of change their idea about
Right.
people who are working in this sector. And
Yeah.
I feel most of the people working in this sector have this problem. Like, when they see me, or when they see me at a meeting, dressed the way I am, or talk the way I do, it's a question mark, or it's a surprise for a lot of people. That I literally had a conversation with a marketing manager when I walked in for a meeting, and the first 15 minutes of a conversation was about how I was wearing a beautiful black dress, and the next 15 went on me, uh, on her asking me what Braille is. So imagine that coming from an MNC. And so there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm also going to check if you have any questions coming in. Guys, if you do have any questions, please put them in the comment section. Another question, again, out of curiosity, and because I really believe, I know you're a mother, and
No, I'm not a mother.
oh, you're not a mother. Oh, I'm so sorry. But
I'm
I'm
not.
curious. I'm sorry, then I misread. That's my apologies. But I'm curious to understand, as women, as mothers, as teachers, people who have the power to bring about a change at a young level with young kids and children, right? What is it that one can do? I mean, have you seen anything? What is it that you would perhaps have some insights on that while I go and check if we have any questions?
So, see, I think, and which is, like with Flowers for Sunana and Look Out, Look Within, this is where we sort of
Correct.
intend to be, like,
Yeah.
talk to the children, like talk to them, because I feel they are the smartest, and, it's like an empty slate. You can sort of talk to them about this and not make this, like, basically our goal is that tomorrow when that child grows up and he sees a person use a white cane walk on the road, he doesn't say, oh, poor thing. That is the aim, like, change the perception of, and also normalize things, or talk about it as, oh, they just don't use this one sense, they use the others a little more, the others
Yeah.
are dominant.
Yeah.
So help bring that. And because of these books, I've got great opportunities to talk to children and work with children, do workshops for them about inclusion, and and sort of sensitize them to these things, that these are very, very, like, we all are different in our own ways,
Right.
and some of us may even have invisible disabilities that are not out there in your face, but despite all that, we all are unique in our own ways, and kids are the best people to understand that. And
Yeah.
they even take home the message to their
Parents.
parents,
Yeah.
and that is what is important. Like,
Right.
and I think that is what we try to do with kids. And it has been really like sort of, satisfying for me to work with children and, adults. Of course, I have worked and I've spoken to a lot, but I think this whole idea of taking it to children is what we are going to build on in the years to come.
Right. I think that's a good point to kind of bring in and talk a little about your journey with white print, right? You did bring up that this was a 2013 initiative, like you said, definitely something far ahead of its times. What's the journey been like? I'm sure, like you said, single-handedly from being peon to being, the person behind the whole idea, it must have been really difficult. You must have had challenges. Could you talk us through the journey and, of course, what lies ahead for white print as well?
I think it's been the most interesting journey for me. Like, it's not been very, very easy, and it's still not. And with the pandemic, of course, there are layers and layers of challenges that are ahead of us. But the best thing that I think that has happened for me is there's never been a case study that I've had to follow. So I can make my own rules. I can break them, sort of mold them, mend them,
Right.
whatever I want with them. And I think that is what I love doing. So even if I have an idea tomorrow, I can implement it within a few weeks, because it's all in my hand. And we don't have any investor on board. We are self-sufficient, sort of bootstrap. And that has given me the freedom to sort of steer this in the way that I really think works best for white print. It's really, really sort of close to my heart. And challenges, yes, finance is biggest challenge. Talking to people about why this magazine, why we can't focus on the numbers, is one of the biggest challenges for us. But yes, more than anything, I think it's the mindset, as I've been repeatedly saying, that used to boil my blood earlier. Like, I used to be like, why would you say this,
Yeah.
but I've just realized that there are so many different kind of people who have not been exposed to this, apart from that one visit to a blind school when you were a child. There has been nothing that has been really done, or as you said, media has not really done its part in sensitizing people or bringing the actual issue out. So I think that is where a lot of our work is going to focus on. But
Okay.
we are going to focus more on children and coming up with children's content in the near future as well. And I think that is a good way to sort of, and all of this has been out of experiences and instincts, that has been the best part. Like, I've never had to come up with a 5-year plan and see where it goes, because there's no way I can do that. I need to let sort of time and situations decide what I come up with next. Like, every project that I've done has been a part of 2 years of saving off money from whatever we make, and then putting it into the next project and the next project and the next project. So yeah, I've never been able to like sort of cut myself a salary or enjoy like great money, like like a lot of people from my age do. But most importantly, it has been about bringing about that change, and enjoying that from our subscribers. Like, I had somebody who came up to me, a daughter-in-law who subscribes to the magazine for her father-in-law, and she's like, I have never seen him so happy in a while.
Mm.
Like, he used to feel like there's this vacuum of intelligent content in Braille, and white print has sort of helped him feel that satisfaction when he reads. And she's like, as soon as it arrives, he reads it like from cover to cover. He does not get up from his chair. And that for me is sort of a reminder. It reiterates the fact that what we're doing is we're going on the right path. The pace
Right.
might be slow, but I'm comfortable taking the smaller steps.
Right. And why the name white print? I'm sure there's a story there as well.
So yeah, it's basically when we started applying for titles. When you start a magazine, you need to apply for a title, and typically each time you apply, you're allowed to give 5 options.
Okay.
And my titles were rejected twice, and this is the third attempt. I sort of spent about 8 months in getting a title,
Okay.
which was really long await, and I had already quit my job, and I was doing like freelance writing, editing work, just so that there was money coming in for me to like pump in to start the magazine. Yes, it was, like that's where we started from. But white print was the first option that we gave in the third attempt, and a very close friend of mine who I still sort of go back to almost every day with my problems, and okay, this is what I'm doing, is this right? So Kritika has been like one of my sounding boards, throughout the journey. So this, she had given us white print as a
Okay.
name, and I loved it, and luckily we got it. And for us, white print is like a creative representation of the Braille script.
Okay.
So it is
Okay.
beautiful white print. So yeah.
Right. Interesting. Interesting. I think everybody is just soaking in all the information that's kind of getting thrown at them. We don't have any particular questions as such, but it's great, and I'd love for this conversation to just keep going on and on. But unfortunately, we don't have all the time. I do want to understand though. You said, these have been really testing times. Things have been difficult. Would you like to talk about any particular challenges that you faced, or how this time kind of brought to light something that you perhaps didn't prior to this?
Correct. So of course, as soon as the pandemic hit, we had to like the press stopped working, so we were not working for 5 months. But
Right.
of course, in those 5 6 months, we came up with Flowers for Sunena, because I didn't want to like not do anything for the topic that we've picked up. So we did an ebook. That was our way of adapting. But also after that, the bigger challenge was a lot of the corporates who worked with us over the last 7 years decided not to continue working with us, because everybody has been putting in money for COVID relief. But we had to move on, because September is when our press started again and we started printing again.
Right.
And which is why we came up, like I sort of was thinking one day, and of course, like really getting worried about how we're going to do this, and from where is the money going to come from, because Braille printing is extremely expensive, and which is when I was like, okay, you know what, like if the bigger corporates can't work with us, why don't we work with smaller companies for whom, or mid-level companies for whom 5,000 might not be a great pinch, but it might be an interesting way of doing something innovative with their brand.
Right.
And I was so surprised that I put it out on social media. I just made a video and I'm like, let me put it out, let's see what happens. And Midday found it very interesting, the newspaper in Bombay, and they did a story on us, and we actually ended up, we've been getting, touchwood, at least one ad a month, which is hopefully going to help us pay a part of our bills, and which is what this year is all about, just surviving
Yeah.
and making sure the magazine survives, and hopefully it does. But it does not help us completely take care of the printing costs, but we are in, like sort of moving closer towards finding solutions. But till then, this has been like our thing to hold on to, like try and get as many as people who can collaborate with us with this very, very minimal cost advertising.
Right. I think we only wish you more power, and we do hope that this reaches more and more great heights. It's been really insightful, and definitely something that we support. And it's been a great conversation. Last but definitely not the least, like we said, it's been tough times, but we want to leave on a positive note. So give us something that you've been really grateful for from 2020.
Oh my God. I think I have. So, the best part about even not printing white print was the constant messages out of the blue from my readers saying, we understand the magazine is not being printed, we are with you. Like
Right.
I never asked for it, it just came. So it was a constant reminder that no matter how tough it is, it's always going to work, because the people you have built this for love it so much that like the product itself has its heart and its place.
Right.
I think that's what is where I derive my strength from.
Right.
And no matter how tough the times look, I think we find a way out, and that goes for life. That we've just adapted, and so is what all of us need to do. Just adapt and try and find your own ways. There's no right, there's no wrong. And the biggest lesson for me has been asking for help. Like, I would always sort of hesitate in doing that, but I just put it out, and if things are supposed to happen, they'll happen, and it all finds its way in the end.
Yeah, I think those are beautiful words, and we'll leave everybody with those words. And on that note, thank you so much,
Thank
Upasana.
you
You
very
can,
much.
guys, you can check out White Print on White Print Mag, and Upasana at Upasana Mag. Out. We will be putting all the socials and everything. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us on a Friday evening. Thank you, Upasana. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And more power to you and what you're doing. And I hope we're all working towards a little more inclusivity in general. And let's just hope that's what 2021 will be about and beyond.
Yes.
Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Upasana.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I love the conversation with you.